This is Ray.
This is Andy.
And this is FDS CFL Season 3, Andy. Episode 8.
Episode 8. How's it going, Ray?
It's going great.
It's been a great day. This is a wonderful drive over here in the city of Moncton. For those of you coming to Touchdown Atlantic, let me tell you something. The construction in this city is about as well thought out. No, I'm not going to go there. Anyway.
There's nothing like being blocked in traffic or blocked from a Facebook group.
Okay, all right. Hey, this episode, like all of our episodes, is brought to you by Moose Light. If you need yourself a beer, and I wish I could have one right now, but it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I got to drive north after this. Get a Moose Light because
it's scary good, folks.
Exactly.
Scary good.
Unlike the construction around here. Yeah. That's just scary. All right. And if you need a shirt with logos or hats or anything like that, go look up our buddies, the Doyles at Doyle Corporate Image. I'm sure you can order online or you can show up here and get something because
the Doyles rule.
The Doyles rule.
Doyles rule.
Let's run through the games this week, Ray. Some of them were amazing. Some of them were not.
No, some of them not, but I'll tell you, there was one game in particular. We'll get to it. I loved it.
Yeah, well,
loved it.
I'm sure I know which one it is. Thursday night, Toronto visited Calgary. Now, both defenses combined for 6 picks, 5 sacks. I mean, Toronto really put up a fight here, and it really came down to the better team outlasting, really. So 22 of the 26 Calgary points came off turnovers. So listen, the Argos really gave Calgary every chance they could to take this game, which they did. Jawan Breskison was back for Calgary and had a big fantasy game. He had 2 touchdowns. Let me ask you this, though. After seeing what Arbuckle did and everything like that, you had a little bit of a hot take. Probably the only guy in Canada with this hot take thinking, who needs Bo Levi Mitchell and maybe he should be traded or something like that. When you still feel that way, or do you feel like Bo might be a little upgrade, take this team even to another level?
Well, I think, listen, Bo's a veteran, but I do think that where there's smoke, there's fire. And I've seen some smoke coming from the outside, outside the city limits of Calgary.
Yeah. Watch
out for the Bo Levi Mitchell. And Pipkin from Montreal, he too may be joining that conversation.
Well, that's fair enough. All right. Well, anyway, that game, I got nothing else to say about it really other than Toronto. It doesn't get any easier, and they're staying in Alberta because their next game's in Alberta as well. Hell of a road trip, guys. All right, next up, Ottawa visits Winnipeg in the biggest lock of the season for me when I called them. I have very little faith in Ottawa, as you know, that we've been talking. To me, Ottawa's right there with Toronto and BC in terms of the state of their team right now. And last week, when we were saying, well, there is no other quarterback ready to start, what were we talking about? I got a couple messages saying, Jonathan Jennings, You know what? Now with the gift of hindsight, let me tell you, I don't take it back. They do not have another quarterback.
They don't have another. And I'm going to talk about Jennings in a few minutes here, but more than anything, Winnipeg has set a couple records in this game, Andy.
Yeah, Nichols,
Yeah, 19 straight completions. Nichols, he goes 25-29, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Andy, this is the first time since 1960 that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have started out the season 5-0. So good job to the Blue Bombers. I think Rick Campbell, the head coach of the Ottawa Red Blacks, has to carry a lot when it comes to this loss by this amount. But we'll talk about him in a few minutes.
Yeah, well, I had plenty of time to sit and listen to the 2 and Out podcast while I was sitting in traffic on the way over here. So I want to credit Brazilian Ty with this little fact. But not only is Winnipeg 5-0, but they're 5-0 against the spread.
Wow.
So if you're a guy that bets on football, look out for Winnipeg. Edmonton travels to Montreal in the game we were the most excited about. We were actually going to travel to Montreal ourselves for this. I'm the reason that fell through, so I will take the blame, and man, am I regretting it.
It was such a good football game.
Oh, by the way, Winnipeg beat Ottawa 31-1. In case you wanted to hear the scores, sorry, I forgot about that one. Sorry. Edmonton travels to Montreal. Vernon Adams has another solid performance, including a touchdown reception as Montreal brings out the Philly special.
The Philly special.
Yeah, le Philly special. We'll go with
special that. Special Philly?
Well, I guess not really. Wow, Montreal continues to impress. I'm completely bought in on them, as you know, and my power rankings, which we'll get to, will show that. What a great 3 games it's been for an Als fan, especially the games in Montreal.
Absolutely. Trevor Harris, my former brother.
Now acquaintance.
Former friend.
Oh my gosh, Red. Oh my gosh, I hope you're not watching.
I'm just joking, Trevor.
Yeah.
But poor Trevor Harris, he had gone 4 games with no interceptions. He throws 2 in this game, Andy. 1 to Greg Reed and 1 to Taylor Laufer. So that streak is dead. There's no more streak for no interceptions.
Yeah.
The thing I love about Montreal, I mean, I've talked about their defense. I could talk about them all day long. Love that defense. But now with Stanback and they had Jeremiah Johnson in that backfield, that is a hell of a 1-2 punch for a running back combo.
Yep.
I am really liking what Montreal's doing in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and Vernon Adams Jr., who can run a little bit himself, is being incredibly smart about it. You know, he's making those Russell Wilson-like decisions as to when to run, as opposed to, let's say, the old Jonathan Jennings decisions.
Absolutely.
Which Jonathan Jennings may have to go back to that, to be honest with you.
There was a lightning delay in this game as well.
There was, and Montreal did not let that impact them whatsoever. They came out with just as much momentum and took care of it.
That's it.
The second game that night, I actually stayed up and watched the entire thing.
Did you watch it?
BC visited Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan takes this one 38-25, though it was actually pretty competitive, back and forth the whole game. Charleston Hughes was wreaking havoc, though everybody wreaks havoc on
3 sacks.
Yeah, everybody wreaks havoc on poor Mike Riley these days. He had 10 tackles and 3 sacks, like you mentioned. I don't know, I don't know what else to say here about Mike Riley. We've basically said it all. He's still doing... He probably... another thing that 2 and Out said on the way over here, not to steal their entire podcast, but sorry, I had to sit in construction and listen to it. But, Riley probably should have came out of this game.
Yeah, he should have been out of... They should have taken him out a couple games ago. Yeah. This guy here, Andy, he's playing in front of probably the weakest offensive line that I've seen in a long time. And... everybody knows I'm a Buffalo Bills NFL fan, and that's a weak. I know weak offensive lines. That's a weak offensive line. Yeah. But you still got to give Riley some credit, Andy. He throws up 40 passes. He completes 31 of them. 346 yards. That's a good day. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The biggest story out of this game, Andy. The biggest story, and it's all over social media. Gainer.
Yep.
Kicked around a stuffed lion before the game. He was picking him up. He picked him up right by the private parts, Andy, and then kicked him.
Yeah, your buddy Duron Carter had even jumped in on this and had some things to say about it on social media.
Yes, I saw.
So it may have been a little. Gainer may have crossed the line.
He may have crossed the line.
But listen, Gainer's not been right this whole season. We'll just leave it at that.
For a guy that is, calls out mascots.
Yeah.
This mascot, we got to keep an eye on this guy. We got to keep this mascot in check because
some mascots have thick skins, some don't, man. And I think things are starting to get to Gainer, man. Things are starting to get to Gainer. What's your take it or leave it this week?
My take it last week, Andy, was the Montreal Alouettes. And when I looked at what my take was going to be this week, I dug a little deeper into the Alouettes because I love what's going on there so much. My take him this week is Kahari Jones. Yep. I love what this guy's done. Andy, this guy was a quarterback in the CFL, Arena Football League, the World League of Football, American football. He had his most success as a quarterback with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. In 2001, he was the CFL's most outstanding play of the year. This franchise has been through a lot in the last 2 years. The whole Johnny Manziel debacle. They gave up 2 first-round picks, and Manziel just couldn't grasp the Montreal offense there.
No.
Then the whole GM situation with Carvis Reed, which has just been up recently. And then ownership issue.
Sorry.
Cavis?
Sure.
Kelvis? I don't know.
Kelvis. I like that even better. It's Kelvis Reed. Kelvis Reed we're going with. Keep going. Sorry, not to throw you off.
Ownership issues. What this guy has done, he's gone 3-0 in the last 3 weeks against Hamilton Edmonton, and Ottawa, who were in the Grey Cup last year. Okay. This guy has not just turned his team around, but he has turned the entire franchise around to where people are excited about the Montreal Alouettes right now.
Yeah, 100%. They're going into bye at the right time, I think, though, in my opinion. But I don't think if they were up to Montreal, they wouldn't be going into bye. They'd be going right into another game to get another victory. But so it's going to be not quite the same this week with no Alouettes to watch because they are the hottest team.
They are the hottest team.
League.
It's the worst time in the world for them to have a bye week.
Right. What are you leaving?
I am leaving Coach Rick Campbell of the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Oh, okay.
He, right after last week when Montreal beat the Red Blacks 36-19, he came out in his post-game conference and said, Dominic Davis is still my guy. Yeah. He's tough. You heard me say the things on our podcast last week.
Yeah.
He was sticking with Davis. Midweek, Andy, all of a sudden it was announced that he was going to be starting Jonathan Jennings.
Well, apparently Dominic Davis's injury, which they didn't think was going to be, that big of a deal, he woke up the next day and it had gotten worse or something. I mean, I read all kinds of interesting reports there.
Yeah, but there's no report on what it actually is.
Yeah.
He's not telling us exactly what it is. And now all of a sudden, Jennings is going to be starting this week against Calgary.
Oh, they've already
It's already that? Came out today. It was on TSN 1200. Jennings is starting again this week.
Clearly something's wrong with Davis then.
And what I don't understand is Jennings is a veteran quarterback.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he, if something was wrong with Davis, why wasn't Jennings more prepared to play in this week's past game against Winnipeg? Like, they looked like a mess, the Red Blacks this week. Now, remember last year when Trevor Harris was there and they had that little midseason slump?
Yeah.
Maybe this is their midseason slump early on in the season.
Yeah, maybe. But the problem is they don't have a Trevor Harris to get them out of that slump.
Exactly.
Right? So, Dominic, the fact that if I was a Red Blacks fan, I'd be hoping Dominic Davis comes back as soon as possible, and just saying that out loud is a problem for me.
It is.
Jennings looks scared to death.
This was a team that I had ranked third overall on my power ranking, Andy, and I don't even know if they should be like this team is falling fast, and I blame that specifically on Rick Campbell. That's why I'm leaving Rick Campbell.
There you go. Well, I've been putting them right there with the bottom of the barrel for a couple of weeks now. Let's talk about those power rankings. I'm taking some big flack because you know what? I had a hard time this week just like you did, but I had to go with my gut. I had to sit and ask myself, all right, is this team better than this team? I don't care what they just did because, spoiler alert, I actually dropped a team that won a game.
Yeah.
And I bumped a team that was on a bye week. Two rules that we have that we don't do, but I had to do it. Winnipeg stays at number one. Of course, they stay at number one. Yeah. Now, here's a move that people didn't love. I moved the Hamilton Ticats from 3 up to 2, even though they were on a bye week. The reason I did that is I moved Montreal from 5 all the way up to number 3 because I am buying that Montreal is better than Edmonton, who they just beat, and Montreal is better than Calgary. I'm not ready to buy that they're better than the Ticats. Have they been playing better lately? Yeah, but I'm not there yet. I'm just not there. I said there's no way if the Alouettes and the Ticats were about to play a playoff game right now, would I be taking the Alouettes to win that game? I can't just yet. So the Ticats go to number 2. Montreal in number 3. I feel great about that. These next couple of teams, positions 2 through 5 were really tough to figure out. 2 through 6, sorry. But I definitely think right now Montreal is the best of those teams. The Eskimos dropped from 2 all the way to 4 for their loss. And Calgary drops from 4 down to 5, even though they won.
Yeah.
All right, now listen, even BC has beaten Toronto. I had to ask myself, is Calgary better than Edmonton right now? I'm not going to forget what Edmonton did this year. Yeah, they've had some bad games. They've had some amazing games, and I can't have that short-term of a memory. Trevor Harris, he can play. They can play. They're better than this. So Calgary's at number 5, Edmonton's at 4. Saskatchewan's at number 6 because they are just better than the bottom of the league. And the bottom of the league is Ottawa at 7, BC at 8, and Toronto at 9. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So that's where it is. Listen, all the flack I'm taking about these rankings, I get it. But I just want you to understand how I came up with them. I had to ask myself, Winnipeg's obviously number 1, but the next 4 positions, regardless of whether they were on bye or they won or they lost this week, how do I slot them in terms of how good I think they are? And I just had to go with my gut. There it is.
There you go. It was tough for me this week. I'm not even going to talk about the 4 bottom teams. We're the same on those, and I agree with everything you just said. Winnipeg's number 1. I struggled from pick 2 to pick 5 on how I was going to organize these teams.
Yep.
And I give you full marks for moving Montreal up to 3rd spot. I wanted to move Montreal up as well. Where I question is, why didn't we move Montreal to 2nd overall right now? I really think, and I know we had an off-camera discussion about the fact that you feel that Hamilton's a better team today.
I do.
Than Montreal.
And that's the only reason I didn't move them to 2.
With that Montreal's defense, I don't know if I believe in that statement. I think Montreal is the better of the 2 teams.
Right.
And this week's games are going to show a lot because Hamilton's hosting Winnipeg this week.
Right.
And the only reason why I've got Calgary still in 3rd is because they had just won. How do you drop a team after they won?
I figured out a way to do it.
I know you did. In Edmonton, I took them from 2 to 5. That was a big slap to Edmonton, and I don't know if they deserve that fully.
Right.
But it is what it is. Montreal's at 4 for me. Look out for Montreal going forward because this team, if I had to make my Grey Cup predictions today, Andy,
right,
I think Montreal's going to win the East based on what I'm seeing on the field.
Well, you know what? I got some advice for you, Ray, because everything that you just said tells me that you didn't follow your gut this week at all, and you do not believe in your rankings whatsoever, because you're sitting here giving me grief for not moving Montreal all the way to 2 when I moved them to 3.
I know.
And you left them down there at 4.
I give you full credit for doing that, but
thanks.
I'm trying not to overact after you called me out for overreacting on my power rankings.
All right. Well, now maybe you're underreacting. You got to go back to trusting your gut a little bit more. Okay. All right. Odds and ends, Ray.
Odds and ends. Let's get to odds and ends. So, Andy, Brandon Banks.
Yeah, that was fun.
He has taken to Twitter to call out the CFL and specifically Randy Ambrosie for a fine that he's being given for his interaction with an official on the football field.
Yep.
And Brandon Banks has found a clip of the exact play in question.
Mm-hmm.
And
I watched it.
It looks as though the official interferes with Banks.
Yep.
And yet Banks is the one getting the fine for this.
Apparently the official stepped on his foot.
Yes.
And then he stopped. And
you can't see the camera. The camera doesn't show that part.
Yeah.
But based on the interaction of the two, that's definitely what it looks like.
Well, and you know what? I'm going to believe Brandon Banks on this one, but I'm going to say that he went about disputing it the wrong way because basically with that video evidence, and maybe the referee would have even agreed and said, oh, yeah, no, I stepped on his foot, and then he stopped and we bumped into each other. But then he goes and swears at Randy Ambrosie, and then you're just flat out getting a fine regardless. So, but yeah, that whole thing was kind of funny.
I have to say, whether either league, this has got to be one of the best player grievances I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was funny
on social media.
It was good.
It was good.
Yep.
All right. Montreal may have a new owner, Andy. Mm-hmm. 2 brothers, Jeffrey Lanko and Peter Lanko. Jeffrey is an LA lawyer, and Peter is a Hollywood producer. They grew up in Laval, Quebec.
Yeah.
They were at the game on the weekend, and they said it may be the last game they ever attend as fans.
Oh.
Yes. Jeffrey said that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own the team that you grew up a fan of. He's a huge Alouettes fan, and he also played football for McGill on the same field that the Alouettes play for. So watch this story very closely. There's a good chance that these 2 guys with their ownership group could purchase the Alouettes this week.
Awesome.
And again, I put that on Kahari Jones for, building that team up. He's saving the franchise.
Yep.
Like I said earlier in my take-em. So great news for the Alouettes.
Yep.
Let's talk Atlantic Schooners. Okay?
Yep.
So I've seen a couple postings here, Andy, recently that the Schooners plan to have a field on the team for 2021 starting in Moncton. Okay?
I've read that a couple of times too, and I haven't. Anthony LeBlanc alluded to that plan a little bit to us, though told us that if we announced it, that he would deny it. That was way back during the Touchdown Atlantic press conference, though. But I haven't really seen him double down on that yet. But
CBC has come out with an article stating that 2021 is the start date for this team to start in Moncton.
Well, selfishly, Ray, I mean, that's exactly what I want to happen. And you know what? If that does happen and Halifax Stadium getting built goes a little slow and we can have them for a second year, selfishly, I'm rooting for that too.
We're all good
I'm
for
sorry, Halifax.
So what I've done is I've created a little checkbox list here of things that need to take place for this to happen. I just want to get your thoughts on this.
Okay.
First of all, the first checkbox is to finalize the bid in Halifax. They got to get that finalized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is be actually granted a team by the CFL.
Which will literally happen the moment the plan to build the stadium is okayed.
Right.
Yep.
Then I believe the next box would be workout partnerships, your sponsors, partnerships, all that type of stuff.
Yep.
Grow your season tickets, and then team management.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think team management would be ahead of the season tickets, or like do you think them announcing the team management would help spark season tickets?
I don't think so. I think the ownership group, just in terms of ticket sales and so on, they can handle this. But remember, there was rumors like almost a year ago that they were thinking of hiring that guy that used to work for the Hamilton Ticats as their pro personnel guy. So obviously they were jumping the gun on that, and they thought things were going to move a lot faster. But no, I think they'd be fine. But the moment you're granted your team, then you got to get the brains.
Is there anything there that you think I left out?
No, I think it comes down to this. The CFL has practically already granted the franchise conditional on one giant thing. You need a stadium. So, if CFL, and again, I want to read more into this, or at least I want to hear more definitive proof from Randy Ambrosi and Anthony LeBlanc and the ownership group about this Moncton plan for 2021. But because, if the CFL is okay with the Moncton Stadium for a season or two, I mean, they should be okay with the Moncton Stadium permanently.
Absolutely. It looks just like the plans for the stadium in Halifax.
A lot like it. And I just want you guys to know, even though I live in Moncton, I am behind the team going to Halifax. I believe that.
Same here.
I believe that they will sell more tickets and have more people if it goes to Halifax. But selfishly, listen, if we get the team and we get to start it here and we build a bond with this team and something happens and you screw the pooch Halifax, we won't keep it. So that's all there is to it.
We want it.
Before we move on real quick, Ray, I wanted to ask you about one play because we talk about calls and from an official's perspective. Did you see the play in BC versus Saskatchewan where punter John Ryan runs the fake, throws the ball to, I believe it was Keenan LaFrance, and the strangest penalty gets called I've ever seen. This must get whistled down from the booth of somebody reading a list of players, but apparently this guy was not listed, even though he's sort of a receiver, he was not listed as a guy that would be eligible to act as a receiver in this particular game. Right. Does that make sense?
No, it was that particular play.
It was only on that play that
you
read?
Yeah, it was the fake that they almost faked themselves out of the fake. And I've seen a little bit of the play. I'd like to really see the entire play in slow motion before I see. But basically from what I see is he never got up to the line of scrimmage where he'd be an eligible receiver to catch the ball.
No, there's a card that has a list of players on it that is submitted before the game that they referenced and looked at him, and that card said he was not an eligible receiver. You go back and you look at it, and we'll talk about it next week because there was something submitted ahead of the game, and he was not marked as an eligible receiver, even though technically he's a running back.
Yeah.
But he does
in Canadian football, the things we want to know prior to the game: who's your kicker, who's your punter, who's your onside men. Yeah. And who's going to be returning balls for you. Well, those are the things that we want to know prior to the game. I've never seen where you have to give an eligible list of who your receivers are going to be.
Oh, yeah, you have to. You also have to give the starters who are going to be Canadians and so on, and somehow the refs had to figure out if you're breaking that rule. So there's a lot going on there. So kudos to them for realizing that. And the coach did come out and say, I've made the mistake before. Bonehead move is what it is. Look into it, though.
I'll look into it.
All right, picks, man. We both went 4-0 in the picks this week. I got my lock, which was Winnipeg. You got your upset, which was Montreal, and I called Montreal as well, which is how I got the 4-0. We're both 16-7 on the season, so we're really climbing above 500 here.
But I have a little tiebreaker there.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because at the end of the day, the overall record is what matters the most, but these little locks and so on are what I kind of came up with as our tiebreaker. So at the moment, you have the tiebreaker, as you are 4-2 on your locks and upsets, where I am 3-3. Now, would you like to pick the games for the week?
Let's go. In game number 1, we got Calgary visiting Ottawa with Jennings as the quarterback. Now, if you remember, we saw Jennings play in Ottawa.
We did.
And he had a fairly good game.
Or wait, no, that was Lule.
Oh, yeah, Travis Lule.
You're darn right. Travis Lule looked good out there. It didn't look like Jennings at all. He
did look good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be taking the Calgary Stampeders to win this game against Ottawa.
Oh, me too. Hands down. I could care less about the home field advantage at this point. I need to see some drastic change in Ottawa. They are right, like I said, they're right there at BC. It's an automatic call against them right now. So hopefully they rebound. There's 2 Thursday games this week as opposed to 2 Saturday games. So the second Thursday game is Toronto, who's already in Alberta practicing away, visiting Edmonton. Edmonton took a big dive in both of our power rankings after that loss to Montreal, and they're upset and they're ready to rock. And what better remedy for that than the Toronto Argonauts, Ray? Do I even have to ask who you're picking here?
After the Edmonton Eskimos got beat by Winnipeg, what did Trevor Harris do? He went back home and bounced back with a huge win against BC. Yeah. That's exactly what's going to happen in this game. Harris will come out throwing the ball big time down the field. There will be a number of scores in this game. I'm taking Edmonton to win.
Yeah, is that your lock this week?
That's not my lock.
That is not your lock this week. All right.
That'd be an easy lock. But I'm going to challenge my lock this week. I'm going to go with a challenging lock.
Fair enough. All right. Friday game. This is a big one.
This is
Winnipeg coming into Hamilton. Hamilton's a team I still believe in. And I'm going to have to prove it here, Ray. So I'll jump right out here and tell you. Well, I'm going to ask you first. You will consider it an upset?
I'll give you the
upset. If Hamilton wins this game?
I'll give you the upset.
And beats the 5-0 Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who are also 5-0 against the spread?
I'll give it to you.
I have to go. Listen, if I didn't have to pick an upset this week, I would be picking Winnipeg to win this game. But you know what? 5-0. Eventually, they got to lose a game. I believe in Hamilton, and I have to prove it, keeping them in number 2 in my power rankings. I am taking Hamilton to win at home, and I'm calling it my upset for the week. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Very good. Hey, no problem. Because every once in a while, you got to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
You can't just take the easy road in life all the time, Andy.
Okay.
You got to make some difficult decisions.
Okay.
I am taking the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as my lock this week.
Nice.
To smack around those Ticats that people keep telling me are, they're the best team in the CFL. They're the best team in the CFL. Just you wait till they play the Blue Bombers. Well, guess what, folks? I'm taking Winnipeg as my favorite this week to smack those Ticats and show everybody the team who I think they really are.
This is a huge game for our pick'ems. Huge game. Love it, because this could sway the tiebreaker and this could sway the picks too. So I love it. And the Saturday game that I am way less excited for, but I'm sure the Western CFL fans are still jacked up in some way. We got Saskatchewan visiting BC to go take on Mike Riley again. What do you got here?
I'm telling you, this is going to be a really tough matchup this week.
Yeah?
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
I really see the battle of the mascots this weekend. If Gaynor shows up in BC, look out. We may have a pregame fight between 2 mascots, and I'm all in on that. And I'll be taking the BC Lions. I'll be taking the BC Lions mascot in that victory.
Okay.
And you know what? While we're at it, and while we're doing some crazy things, I'm going to take the BC Lions to win at home against the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Wow, that's a gutsy call, Ray. I'm proud of you for making it. No, I'm taking Saskatchewan. Until I see BC win a game, there's no way I'm calling a victory, especially not when we're working with spreads or anything.
Yeah.
All right. Those are the picks.
Those are your picks.
Let's talk fantasy real quick, and then we can get the heck out of here. Oh, man, I've been telling you, don't let me back into it. And not only did you let me back into it last week, but then you rebounded with an absolute flop on your face. And I'm proud to say that we record on Mondays, and we make our fantasy team picks on Monday. A lot changes between it, and we make little changes from time to time. But I am proud to say that my team that I announced on our podcast last week is the team I stuck with.
Nice.
And I had my best fantasy performance of the season so far, 112.4 points. Wow. That gets me to 513.4 on the season. I have moved into third place from fifth place in the FDS group, and that has jumped me all the way to 24th position in the Schooners group from like 35th.
Wow.
I'm on the move, Ray. Let's talk about someone who's on the move in the other direction.
All I can tell you is I've been a little cute the last couple of weeks, and it's not happening anymore.
Okay.
Now, we're using my camera this week for recording.
Yeah.
My lineup's on that phone.
Okay. So you can't even you name it. You're not even going to name it.
I'm not even going to name my fantasy team this week. I'm going to leave it hidden, and I'm going to come out swinging on Thursday night with my fantasy lineup.
You know what I think he's doing? He wants me to read him my list right now so he can write it down really quickly and then go set the lineup. And you know what? I'm not scared, right?
All right.
I started a defense last week, and
Good.
they were my second most productive. Listen, and I'm ready. I'm starting a defense again this week. Why not? Here's my fantasy squad as it is right now. I got Matt Nichols and Andrew Harris. I'm loading up on Bombers this week because you know how I feel
they're the
about
favorite.
Their matchup.
They're the favorite.
Well, and you know how I feel about their matchup. I also have Lucky Whitehead in one of the wide receiver spots. I think he's going to scrape together a little something. I've got Martez Jackson as my running back, a real cheap option. I got to hope for some return yards and various things like that. Juwan Breskison, who looked great back for Calgary. I'm hoping for another solid game for him because, again, there's value there with how much this guy costs. Yeah. And my flex position, Mr. Duron Carter, who went for over 10 fantasy points last week again. Listen, the guy, even though he's not doing the things that we're used to seeing him do, he still gets on the fantasy stat sheet, and for the amount that he costs, I don't know. I like going with Carter, and I am going with the Calgary defense.
Nice.
Calgary defense. So that's my team.
There you go. Well, I will put my fantasy list up on our Facebook page before Thursday night's games.
Okay.
I can tell you I'm also carrying a defense. It's the Edmonton Eskimos.
Oh,
and I can also tell you as of right now, my flex is also Duron Carter.
That's all. Okay, wow. So you're really...
But everything else, we're going to keep that hidden till Thursday.
If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We would really appreciate it. If you're listening to this on your podcast app of choice, which they're available on them all, subscribe to that if you haven't already. We really appreciate that.
And you know what, Andy? I got some news for you. We've already had a couple new subscriptions on our podcast this morning.
Excellent.
So great news, guys. And what's interesting, guys are going back to check out some old interviews of ours, as well as still catching up on our Anthony LeBlanc interviews. So thanks for checking that out. And like Andy said, subscribe and you'll find out every time we release a new podcast right away.
Enjoy the games, folks.
Have a great week.
Don't forget to check out our Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as our website, firstdownsportspodcast.com.